So the first thing you want to do is make sure you're sitting in a well-lit area and that you're comfortable and that your pencil is sharp. And then we're ready to get started. So the first thing I like to do is to get down a very simple basic shape, a shape of the object that you're drawing. And you want to keep it extremely light because these objects don't have an outline. But we're trying to get an idea of the size of the object. That way we just kind of know where to draw. So I'm very lightly sketching the shape of this feather. And make sure you have your eraser ready because we're going to be making mistakes here, and you have to realize it's never going to be perfect the first time. You're going to have to change things up, and that's okay. So I kind of have a basic shape down, and I like to usually start towards the center of the object. So I'm going to start with this right here, the stem. And I'm going to start towards the bottom and work my way up. You can always do the opposite. You can always work down this way too. And just take note of the shape. You know, this is not a perfect square. And note that it gets thinner and thinner as we get to the tip of the feather. And so I have this basic shape down. So what I'm going to do is start very lightly filling in some of the shadows just so I get an idea. I'm not going to do anything very dark yet because I'm going to kind of just do all the light parts first and then fill in the dark parts last. Also realizing that this is a cylindrical shape, and so I like to draw in the direction of how I think that shape is, which is kind of in this circular motion this way versus this way, but I will probably add a little shadowing that way as well. And they kept the middle part pretty basic, just a little shadows here and there. And it looks like I may have gone skinny here, and I'm not trying to copy this feather perfectly. Every feather is going to be a little different. I have this basic shape down. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw the left side of the feather here, and then I'm going to do something different on the right side. I'm going to do like a more stylistic drawing of the feather, and here I'm trying to go with the more realistic to create some contrast there. So I'm just going to start at the bottom here. And really what you're doing is just creating, kind of drawing lots of almost like hair-like lines. And recognizing that there's some broken spots here. some of the, a lot of the hairs are not going the exact same direction. You know, it keeps this more organic feel to the feather, that it's not perfect. You know, feel free to adjust yourself or your drawing pad to keep yourself comfortable. And as you see, although it's darker here, I'm not really filling that in just yet. I'm kind of just getting the basic shape down and kind of taking note of the different parts of this. There's some lighter and darker parts, and the edges are not perfect. You know, like a real feather, the edges would be a little different. And that's going to give it a more realistic look. Right now we're drawing a picture of a drawing. So keep that in mind whenever you choose a picture. When you're drawing a picture of a drawing, think of it like telephone, right? Some things could get lost in translation, and you might miss something. If you're trying to do something extremely realistic, you're trying to work on your realism, you may want to work off a picture of the real object. So, you know, taking a picture of an actual feather, or even having a real feather to work off of. That way you'll see little details from the real object that could have been missed in a drawing. But I think drawing a drawing is kind of good to start off with, because you kind of can see where the artist is going and what they did. And you can always work with that. You can change it up a little bit. You see there's some light parts here, there's some dark parts. And I'm just getting darker as we go, but keeping some of these light parts that they did here, which I think gives it more a realistic look. So as you see, I just keep working down to up like that. And I think I'm gonna get rid of my original lines of my basic shape. And I can't erase all of this area, but that's okay, because this is gonna get covered up as I continue to draw. So I wanna get in a few darker hairs here. And what I like about this area is I see for some of these longer hairs, they added some really tiny feather hairs here. And I'm noting that it's a much darker in this area and along the stem area. So I'm just adjusting my pad as I do this. Keeping each hair kind of a little different, going in the kind of similar direction, but not exactly the same for every single hair. Just getting a couple darker ones in there. And as you see, I'm not following the drawing exactly. I'm kind of putting my own little spin in some areas, and that's okay. If we try to copy exactly, this will take forever. But when you're working off a real picture or a real object, it is nice to take the time and kind of just recognize some areas, and that will help you get a more realistic look. So I see that it's getting much lighter. There's less lines here. Gets a little darker in some areas, a little lighter in some areas, and so I'm trying to keep it consistent with that. You notice the hairs get extremely light right here. So you want to keep that feel to it. There's maybe just a couple of hairs that are darker or longer. So I feel like I'm pretty close here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back one last time and really get the dark areas now. So I'm going to start over here. and just really darken this area, but I'm not going to draw or I'm not going to create an outline because we want to refrain from doing an outline of an object. They don't have outlines. I think we just automatically try to create an outline, so we have a basic shape. But we want to, I think, for the most part, refrain from drawing a dark outline to keep it more realistic looking. So I'm gonna do a couple darker spots here as well. And my light source is moving. And see, there's a dark spot right here. I want to keep that because it gives it more of a three-dimensional effect. And just erasing any lines that just aren't making sense to you. Trying to keep it pretty light at this point and not overdo it. I erased that because the line looked a little too dark right there. And I really like this little offshoot right here of feather. So I want to keep that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move on to this right side, and I'm going to just very lightly get an idea of the shape of this, the rest of this feather. And I'm not, again, I'm keeping it extremely light. You know, if you look at the direction of this feather, it's curved. It's curving that way. Gets really narrow down here, and there's just a few hairs down here. So I found this picture online, and I thought this was really cool. And so I'm literally gonna just break this in half and kind of recreate something similar to this, but put my own spin on it. And here you got to remember, you're keeping everything, you're breaking everything in half. And I'm just working from the top to the bottom here. And I'm not filling in this extremely dark yet. Kind of just going with the light. And as you see, I'm erasing as I go. Changing this up. Right now I'm really liking the different I'm really liking each different design they've created here. I feel like it's got a really cool effect. But I'm also keeping with this shape a little bit. Just changing it up. Keeping it light still, in case I want to change something. Getting comfortable so you can draw a straight line. Keeping in mind you can always put your own spin on something. You don't have to copy something exactly as you see it. little too thick. That's kind of just reminding me what I'm going to do. I'm going to recreate this. I really like how this one part really stands out. So I am going to make this part a little bit bigger and kind of just incorporate that. I don't know if I love that actually. The second part's very similar. It's just a smaller, thinner. I actually really like this one too, so I might go with something like that. Let's see. I got maybe enough room for two more here. So I'm gonna pick my favorite ones, but I like this kind of simple one right here. And maybe we can squeeze in another really just thin one at the end here. See what they did. I almost want to just do something a little different here, kind of like this just crisscross shape, the cross hatch. I'll just add a couple darker ones here. And since this is kind of stylistic and we are creating outlines here of each portion of the feather, so it is okay because that's the effect that you're going for. And anytime you feel like your pencil's getting a little dull, you know, just make sure to sharpen it. because right now what we're doing here is we want to create some straight lines. And so my hand is very comfortable doing this. And I have to keep moving my drawing pad. So as you see, I'm copying this area here, which is supposed to consist of a bunch of dots, and the dots are all condensed as it gets closer to the stem, and then it gets more spread out as it gets to the tip of that portion of the feather. So this part should be extremely dark here towards the center, and then just gets lighter and lighter as we move out. So you can see what I did is I only just drew a line, and now I'm adding the thickness to it. So you see I didn't really leave a whole lot of space, so I'm just gonna fill this in towards the left side. And I'm not really even using this anymore. I might glance at it as a reference guide, but I'm really kind of just creating my own designs here now, based on the ideas from this. And you can always come up with your own. You don't have to follow anything exactly. So here's the time to kind of put in your final touches, and just use your eraser and get rid of any light lines that don't belong. Clean up the edges a little bit. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. Thanks for watching.